Hello, we are making lasagna this afternoon. So this again is a recipe that Jill asked for. So in one of the other videos, you'll see the video for the spaghetti sauce. So that is the sauce that I use in making my lasagna. So there's lots of variations on lasagnas. I'm just going to share, sort of a few of the ways that I do it and the keys to sort of helping it be successful. So lasagna tends to have the three layers. It's going to have a layer of noodle. So today I'm using rice noodles because I'm trying to reduce the amount of gluten that I'm eating. But you can use other vegetables to be the noodle, like if you slice zucchini lengthwise or eggplant. So think about some other vegetables that you could use to create the noodle if you want to do one that does not have the pasta in it. And then there's always a meat layer, so that layer is what I'm using my spaghetti sauce for. But if you wanted to make that vegetarian, you could use a meat substitute. And I've sometimes even made this using butter chicken, and made like an Indian style of lasagna with a butter chicken recipe, substituting for that meat layer. So you could be creative in what those different layers are. And then there tends to be a ricotta cheese, cottage cheese layer. And then we also have some shredded cheese that goes on as well. So that ricotta cottage cheese layer is something that sometimes people omit. Sometimes people will put a bechamel sauce in instead of a cheese layer. So you can sort of mix that up, and as you look at different recipes, you'll find different ways of using that layer. I've even seen some recipes that use really roasted vegetables for that layer. So you can be creative in terms of how you're layering it up. So I'm going to show you how to put so we already made the sauce, and we're gonna do the cheese layer. So when I went to the store last night, I couldn't find any ricotta cheese, so I just bought the cottage cheese. So I'm just gonna, this is a 1 liter container. I'm gonna just dump that into a mixing bowl. And then to that, I'm going to add 2 eggs. So that gives it some liquidity, a little bit of moisture. And add the 2 eggs. I'm going to add 2 cups of the mozzarella cheese. So I bought it shredded. So this is a 3-cup container. There's about 3 cups in here. Oh no, actually it's 2 cups. So I'm going to dump all of this in as 2 cups of my mozzarella cheese. And then about 1/4 cup of parm. So this is a 1/2 cup measure. So I'm going to put about half of this in for this layer. And then we're going to put in 2 teaspoons of dried parsley. So some of this parsley I've dried from my own plant, and some of it is store-bought. So I'm just going to dump that in. And then we're going to mix that together. And as you can see, I didn't get a big enough bowl. So I'm going to go up to a bigger bowl so I don't make quite as much mess as I start mixing all of this together. And grab my spoon. And this cottage cheese that I bought was the dry curd kind, so you might want to buy the regular that's got a little bit more moisture in it and isn't quite as dry. We're just going to give this a good stir, make sure it's all mixed together and the cheese is distributed throughout the mixture. So we've got a layer of cheese, and we've got our spaghetti sauce that we made the other night. Got a little bit of that. I make it in my 9x13 pans, and then I've already sort of pre-cooked the noodles. So I cooked the noodles, minimum 9 noodles, but making, depending on how thick you want your noodle later, you may have more or less noodles in it. I find if I buy the smaller box and if I don't cook and use the whole box, then I end up often throwing the box away because it just sits in the pantry for too long. So I try to use it all up. So here we are back, and we are going to start the assembly. So with our pan. You can see this. I always start with a little bit of sauce on the bottom. And so I'm just going to take my pan here and put a little bit of sauce on the bottom and just kind of run it around. And that sort of helps the noodles not stick to the bottom. So a little bit of the sauce on the bottom. And then we start with a layer of noodles. So I don't worry about them if they're broken or not. And so we want to lay, so I find this pan is pretty much the right size for the noodles. You don't have to cut them down. And I end up with some odds and sods and they break and I got pieces, so it doesn't really matter if they stay intact or not. Just layer the noodles on in your pan. One, a few more pieces here. So, you know, I'm just sort of putting about half of them on because I make about 2 layers of pasta. Making this. When you're cooking the pasta, cooking the lasagna, it's really important that you use a big pot so that you can give them room. So I've used my big soup pot to cook them in with some water and salt in the water, and then you can then I just use tongs to keep stirring them. If they don't have enough room in the pot, they end up sticking together and then they make a big mess. And I don't overcook them because they are going to still cook some more in the oven when we warm the lasagna up, and so some of that extra fluid that you might have in your sauce is actually also going to be absorbed into the noodles. So you can I don't use the oven ready noodles because I find they don't actually cook very well in lasagna, and then you end up kind of with rubbery noodles. So I've only used them once and I'm not buying those again. So I usually cook them, but you don't have to cook them until they're really soft. They can still have a little bit of firmness in them because they will cook the rest of the way when they are in the lasagna. So next we're going to put a layer of sauce onto the noodles. And you know, whether you just use a spoon and spread it out as a layer of sauce. And again, you can make this as thick or as thin as you want. Sometimes how thick it is depends on how much sauce you have. As I said, I use this for spaghetti sauce as well, so some of it has disappeared that was in my fridge, and some pasta that Colin and Dad got into the other night. So there, just sort of made sure the noodles are covered. And now we're going to put about half of the cheese layer on as well. So I'm just going to put it on and then just again trying to make sure that we're covering. That meat sauce with a layer of cheese into the corners. And we're going to do that again. Another layer of lasagna. My sticky noodles apart. If you are trying to use a gluten-free noodle, I'd say the brown rice ones are the ones that really are the most like the gluten noodles, because I've tried ones that were made of chickpea flour. I've tried ones that were made out of different red lentil flour, and I have definitely found that the brown rice pasta ones, whether we're talking about lasagna or any other sort of pasta, they tend to simulate as much as possible what my experience was with the other gluten pasta. So we've just used the other half of the noodles here to make another layer, and we're going to put another layer of spaghetti sauce with my meat sauce on it. Okay, and so we have used this one container, which is 1.36 kilograms was a one size container, and it was just about full. So I'd say there's probably about 6 cups of meat sauce altogether. We're going to put the layer of cheese curds on top of that. And we are going to put another cup of the mozzarella cheese on. That's going to be about half of this package, so I'm just going to take a big handful. And sprinkle that along the top. It's cheesy on the top, a little bit more at the center here. And that last part of quarter cup of the Parmesan cheese. I've used the shredded. You can use grated, whatever you happen to have in your pantry, in your fridge. And that's it. We're going to pop this in the oven now at 350, and we're going to make sure it's heated all the way through. So we're going to leave it in the oven for at least half an hour, and if you're cooking it from frozen, of course, a lot longer than that. Here's the lasagna.